Thanks everyone for joining today, and welcome to our second instalment of Ask the Experts, which is actually the first one for 2023. As usual, we have lots of questions to get through today, so I'm going to hand over straight away to James to introduce the team, and then we'll crack on with your questions. So, James, over to you.
Super. So thanks again for joining us. On the call today, we've got some of our smartest experts in Marketo within JTF Marketing on the call. So we've got Alba, who's based in Valencia in sunny Spain, who's a Marketo certified expert and is probably our best consultant, I'm sure. We then have Adam, who's also on the call, who's a certified master or an architect in Marketo. Lots of technical experience that Adam brings to the call. And then also myself, so if you haven't seen me on one of these webinars before, if this is the first one you're joining, I tend to host a lot of our content sharing and knowledge sharing from a webinar perspective. We've also got Tracy on the call, who's our head of marketing, who's going to be the master of ceremonies for this Ask the Expert session. So if you've got any questions that we haven't answered yet, or you haven't submitted, feel free to use the Q&A panel. We'll make sure that we try and get to as many as we can. There was definitely lots of questions that come through, but these clever people on the call will answer all of those questions for you in the next few minutes. For those of you new to JTF Marketing, we've been around for around 7-8 years now, focusing primarily on Marketo and Marketo services. So we structure our business across 3 different kinds of service: consultancy services, training, and structure and certification. And as also we've got software that we've built in-house as well that plugs into Marketo. So we work with a range of different organizations across multiple sectors, and of course across multiple use cases, right? So if you're just starting out with Marketo or have been using it for some time, we've typically got services that can help you. And one of our most popular is our free Marketo audit, which helps you basically understand what have you got in place, what are you paying for, and how are you actually using it. So if you need a bit more information of that, we'll share that with you after this call as well.
So first question today is from Christine, and it's around email marketing best practice. And the question is, what are the best practices for maximizing the engagement of email campaigns? And Alba, I'll pass that one to you.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. So the first one, I think it would be to segment very well your email audience. This means breaking your database into a smaller targeted list. The point of doing this segmentation is to give a more personalized experience to your customers and your prospects. The segmentation could be done using demographic data, infographic, and also behavioral, but it is very important that you always keep in mind to include the preferences, so you are only sending the content that the user has signed up for. Then another very important one is the subject line. This is the most important part of any email asset, as the subject line makes the difference between opening or not opening an email. So you need to keep testing and optimizing the subject line. It is very important also that you remember always to update the pre-header text. If you don't know what is the pre-header text, it's the first line of text that appears after the subject line in your inbox. And I see that a lot of people sometimes forget to update it. So it's very important because it reinforces the subject line. Then another important one would be to have a clear CTA in the email, a clear call to action. I would not recommend having multiple CTAs in your email that can confuse the user or the reader. It is better to have just one clear CTA that encourages the reader to take the action that you want them to take. Another important one would be to make sure your emails are mobile friendly. As you know, in these days, most of the people open the emails in their mobile devices. So it is very important that we make sure that the email looks good in mobile. For that, we can use platforms as Email on Acid that we use ourselves, or Litmus, that this will allow you to send the email and also test how it looks in different email clients, but also how it looks across different devices, mobile, iPhone, Android, everything. Then another important one would be to personalize your email to produce more targeted emails. This consists in giving individual treatment to your readers, and it could increase massively the email metrics. To start using the personalization, you can start using simple tokens as first name or company. And as you get more advanced, you can also include more tokens or dynamic content in your emails. Another important one would be to keep in mind that you don't need to sell in all of your emails. Sometimes it's good to give a little bit of value away to your readers. This could be a downloadable asset or information that you think that could be relevant to your customers or to your prospects. Another important one would be to measure your performance. Always look at opens and clicks, but also to opens and click-through rates, and compare your results with other companies in your industry. And the last one, and the most important, is to test all the time. This includes not only subject lines, but also the whole content, the send times. To do the testing, you can use in the email programs A/B testing, and it's very easy to use and very effective.
Thanks, Albert. And if you missed some of that, we've recently written a handbook download. So if you pop to the website, to the resources section, you'll find a really good handbook there with a lot of that information in too. Next question is around lead scoring models. How would you set up a lead scoring model for a company with multiple services that can be cross-sold? Yeah, that's the first part. I'll let you answer that first, Adam.
Yeah, of course. So it's actually a lot more simpler than you'd expect. So what you can actually do is create multiple scoring fields within Marketo. So essentially, in your case, you might want to create a scoring field for each service that you have within your business. You might also want to consider creating scoring fields for both demographic and engagement-based scoring. And what you can then do is tie this then up within what we refer to as a weighted scoring model. And this allows you to listen out for specific engagement or data value changes as time goes on in real time, and then score them appropriately using both positive and negative scoring.
Cool. And then Juliana says, so how do you track scoring coming in and out of a program?
So you can do this using your individual smart campaigns. All activities are tracked within both individual person records, and also you can create customized reporting using smart lists. But what you can also do is tie in your scoring within the lifecycle model stages that you have within your journey. So setting up specific thresholds which match where you expect them to reach. This then allows you to then alert the relevant persons, such as sales users, as and when, for example, someone reaches the threshold for what you define as an MQL, which might, for example, be 200, and then you can alert the relevant persons, and then they can obviously take the appropriate actions.
The next question is from Adam, and he says, we're migrating to Marketo, and what would you say are the best practices for doing so? James, I'll hand that one over to you.
Sure. I think there's a couple of pieces when it comes to migrations, right? So moving systems is never an easy process. There's lots to think about. There's integrations, of course. There's making sure that we can actively use the system as quick as we possibly can. There's a couple of steps that we go through, which is normally looking at which assets do we need to migrate from whatever tool into Marketo. And there's even some scenarios where we get involved with Marketo to Marketo migrations. I always start with this audit of the current system, whatever it might be, and then being as ruthless as I can, going through asset by asset, understanding which forms do we need, where are they currently deployed, you know, what emails do we need to rebuild, which programs are always on that are priority. And then, of course, there's a couple of things that you always need to think about, like email and landing page templates. So if you're moving from MailChimp into Marketo, for example, then you would need to consider making sure that those templates are available because they're obviously different for the two systems, and you can use a modular template in Marketo that you can then scale across those activities. There's of course technicalities to a migration as well from one system to another. You know, what is the sending domain you're using? What is the DNS configuration? When do you switch them over? So if you need some more detailed advice, because I know we're trying to answer as many questions as we can on this call, feel free to just drop us a line, Adam, and we can go through in a bit more detail in a specific call about your use case, the system you're moving from, and of course then give you some better guidance on how we do that.
Thanks, James. In fact, I'll probably ask you to answer the next one as well. So this is from Sabin, and the question is, what's the best way to handle lead re-qualifications in Marketo when they're integrated with Salesforce?
That's a great question. So it comes up time and time again, right? So when we think about the sales process, especially when you've integrated to a CRM like Salesforce, you generally take this lead on this journey from a lead created in the system through to a qualified contact, which might be an account, contact, an opportunity, and they move through different statuses. In that scenario, you might find that the first sale is easy, right? Because you take them through from a lead into a customer, no problems, you're following your internal sales processes, and they become a contact that's tagged as a customer. If that customer then inquires for, let's say, an additional service or a different product, how do we bring them back to the start? There's multiple ways in which we can do it. We can either recreate a lead from the beginning, which is not recommended because you'll be creating duplicates in your database, or we can actually start to use tasks within Salesforce in order to track engagement, follow-up, etc. Because if we think about how our sales team engage using tools like Salesforce, they're actually tracking activity, tracking their tasks and their follow-ups using activities generally within CRM. And so if we then create tasks that are against existing contacts where they've inquired about additional products or services, we can then follow them up in that way. Now, one of the challenges with that is reporting, right? So we talk about reporting on leads is nice and easy. We say, well, we've passed over 500 leads to sales, but nothing's happened. We then have to build a specific report type in Salesforce in order to say how many of these task types have been created to follow up on these inquiries and how many have then been processed, and how do we then pass the detail into the opportunity to make sure that we can track our revenue. So that's really important. There's a few bits of workflow that need to go in place, and working with your CRM admin, you should be able to do it with ease. So again, it's one of those things we can get into a bit more detail on a specific call with you to understand exactly what it is we need to handle, what are the scenarios where it will happen, and of course, how do we then handle it and keep it to a volume that's sensible? Because you might find, you might sell 15 different products and someone wants to buy multiple products. You don't want 15 different inquiries. You want one inquiry bundled together where we can actually then engage that person the right way. And that might depend on your sales team structure as well, right? So you might have SDRs who look after a certain product and other SDRs who look after a different product. So again, we have got to balance those out as well.
Great. Would that be the same approach for this question, James? So this is from Tatiana, and she says, what's the best way for tracking marketing activities on contacts once they've been converted from a lead to a contact? Would that be a similar approach?
Exactly. So when we talk about, let's say, take an event, for example, and you're inviting customers to an event for a new product launch, typically your account managers will be engaging with those customers anyway and trying to book one-to-one meetings. But when we load in the activity and the follow-up, actually what we can do is still create tasks and say, this person engaged with this event or attended, therefore it's worth a phone call to see where we can get to.
Great. Thanks, James. Right, we're going back to some more questions specifically around email campaigns. So this one's quite specific, but a good one, and it's from Laura. And she says, what are the different tick boxes for link tracking? Alba, that's for you.
So in here, if you click in any link in your email or in a CTA, you can see the two checkboxes. So in here, you can see track link and include the Marketo token. So the first one is to just track the clicks in the certain link in that one. So if you disable this one, also the Marketo token would be disabled. The Marketo token, it's a parameter that gets added to the URL and allow us to track person activities. For example, when someone unsubscribes from a certain email. So if we disable that, we are going to lose that information. So I always recommend to keep those two checkboxes checked and only disable this if, for example, when you add it, the Marketo token, you get a broken link. Because sometimes for certain pages, when you add the Marketo token, it gets broken. So only in that specific case, I would recommend to disable this. Then, for example, for the track link, you can disable if you don't want to count the clicks against, for example, the preference center page or something like that. So you can disable. But in most of the times, I would recommend to always keep it checked.
And another question on emails. Is there a way to report on clicks per person across all emails within a given time frame, e.g. tracking how many clicks each person has made in a month, for example?
Yes. So is it possible? We have 3 ways to track that. The first one would be to use the Revenue Cycle Explorer. If you don't know, that's an advanced reporting tool that we have in Marketo, but you need to check first if you have that purchase in your instance. The downside of this solution is that when you create the report, if you want to share it, you will be sharing also the email addresses of the people. And also it takes a lot of time to load, because you are looking at your entire database. Another good solution would be to create a webhook that triggers every time that an email is sent and adds a value to a field. This field could be resetted to 0 if you want after a certain period of time. And you can also create a new field that is an historical field and keeps the information, for example, for the quarter or for all the year. And then another option that it's the simplest one would be to use scoring fields. So you can create a score field for example, for email sent this week and email sent this month, and you can populate the values looking at that. If you want, I can show you an example, a very quick one. So it would be a campaign like this. The first thing that I did is create my scoring field. So in here we have when email is delivered, any email. You can also exclude in here any emails, for example, any operational emails that you don't want to include in this campaign. And then in the flow, we have a change person score. Well, in this case, email sent per month, and we add 1. You can also, as I said, create another field for email sent per year, and it would be the historical field. And this field here, the email sent per month, could be resetted to 0 after each month if you want. So yeah, the 3 options are valid. The webhook is the option that I like the most, but for that you will need a developer, and for this option you can do it yourself or with the help of a marketing consultant.
Right, what are we on to now? Okay, so the last questions are around social media. And how Marketo can support social media campaigns. So the first one is from Dan, and it's quite generic. So I'll pass this to James, and it is, Dan is curious as to how social media can tie into Marketo.
It's a great question. So there's a couple of different ways in which social integrates to Marketo, and those of you who've been using Marketo for some time will know that the inbuilt functionality for social is quite limited in Marketo. It's not as detailed as we like, but there are some fantastic tools out in the market. Of course, your likes of HubSpot, your Octopus, your Sprouts and everything else. There's a million tools out there for social media management and listening. I think the key part is understanding what is it you're looking to achieve, right? So when we look at different technology out there in the market, there's a few different ways in which social can integrate with Marketo. The first one is if you're using a tool like Octopus, which is one of our partners, you can get detailed analytics, much like you have in the activity log for email, for social posts, built into Marketo so that you can actually trigger it based on scoring, engagement, so on. So that's definitely always our recommendation for detail and lead scoring information, if that's what you're looking for. There's also a great piece around advocacy that Octopus can provide, meaning that your sales team can start to share your content beyond your page, beyond your network, and make sure that then that engagement is pulled back into Marketo so that we can track that as well. Now, that's from let's say organic social perspective in terms of producing content, capturing the engagement, building the scoring back to Marketo. From the perspective of integrations, of course, we've got AdBridge as well that we can use. So AdBridge can serve up audiences to the ad networks like Google, like Facebook, which is obviously Instagram as well. And then you've got third-party integrations, which you can also integrate. So there's quite a few ways in which you can pull data in. It comes back to that kind of common responses. Those of you who've been putting in the Q&A, I've been responding to you. It all depends on the circumstances. It depends what is your specific use case and what are you trying to achieve and how we can best do that. When it comes to social sharing, social polls, there's again a dozen tools out there in the market, which is the same tools you would use on a web page, for example. So again, I think it really comes back to what are we trying to achieve? If I take it into the context of JTF marketing and how we use social, we use Octopus to publish our content. We can track it through the page. We can then use it to score. We build sentiment scoring as well, based on whether people are engaging positively or negatively. Resharing, we can then build the scoring in to help us prioritize conversations and even get into some of the proposition scoring piece that was mentioned earlier. Again, how do we start to use that information to say someone's really interested in training or really interested in deployments of Marketo, therefore, what else can we provide them? You can obviously route people in different ways as well as start other conversations or share even some of the engagement that you're already getting. So it's one of those really broad topics, as you say, Tracy, but there's definitely a lot that can be done in combination with Marketo.
Great, thanks, James. And then one last question, which is quite specific from Jack, and it's around how do you connect Google Forms natively to Marketo, as well as capturing Facebook leads and using Facebook customer audiences? Adam, I'll pass that to you.
James already kind of touched on it already, but essentially Marketo, actually, and this is one of my favorite features, has a lot of built-in API connectors, such as which includes Google, Facebook, and also other webinar tools like GoToWebinar and Zoom. And what the API connectors actually allow you to do is to connect directly with your business accounts, which then allows you with, for example, Facebook and LinkedIn to serve to your existing campaigns custom audience, which you can source directly from Marketo. So essentially what you can do is you can build out the audience segments that you want to push to your campaigns. And so long as they match with the audience when you send them to your campaign in your business account, you can then serve the ads customized. What you can also do is you can capture from forms from Facebook and LinkedIn directly into Marketo. And if, for example, a lead exists, then it will merge into that record and you'll record the activity information. Or if it's a new lead altogether, it will create new leads. And then from there, you can then serve the content that you want using the data that you've just captured.
Great, thanks, Adam. That's definitely an area that I need more help with, so I will be getting in contact with you on that. We are very near the end of the session today. There was a question that came in from Paddy, and it was around top tips for creating successful gated content programs. We're not going to have time to cover that today, but we do have a download on the website. And I can actually send it to you on email as well. So look out for an email from me, Paddy, because we can get that over to you. And if we haven't covered any of your questions today, we are going to be running a social media campaign on our LinkedIn page, where we'll be doing different snippets, basically, of the questions that you guys asked, and then we'll be getting one of our consultants to answer them. So please follow our LinkedIn page and look out for your question and answer. Alternatively, you can always give us a call or drop us an email directly, and we'll do our best to help you out. I think that's it. James, are there any more questions that have come in that you'd like to answer, or have you answered them directly?
I think we've been managing to answer all of them as they've been coming in, so hopefully we've got as many answers as we could. And as Tracy says, we will do our best to answer them all and get them back to you as quick as we can. There's one that's kind of interesting, actually, which is, what happens to the leads that don't give marketing consent in the scenario that we've just been talking about around AdBridge, etc. This is a very interesting topic, right? When we get into cookies and how cookies are getting applied and what the future looks like for cookies. Of course, ads on ad networks are not necessarily consent driven, because again, it all depends on your preferences on that network. And as we now know, most of the social networks don't allow us a choice of whether we see ads or not. We just get bombarded with them. So there is a piece of work that can be done in order to figure out who is accepting cookies on your site, and then whether we include them or exclude them from those audiences served off to the ad networks. Again, it gets a little bit intricate, a little bit more technical. But in the majority of cases, you know, most people don't see the ads anyway on platforms like LinkedIn or Google. And often I use them in the reverse of targeting people as much as excluding people to make sure that we're actually reducing our spend and being very sensitive about who we target. You know, the age-old story of targeting your existing customers with paid ads for new customers. Again, you can use Marketo to exclude them from that ads group and make sure that you're not spending money on existing customers. So that was the last one. I mean, I think there was a couple more which we'll answer offline, but hopefully that answers that question as well.
Great, thanks, James. Well, we're finishing 2 minutes early today, so we've all got 2 minutes back. Go make yourself a cup of tea before your last task or first task of the day, depending on where you are in the world. It's been great to have you all join us today. We will be sending this recording out back to you on email so you can watch it at your leisure. Thanks again for joining, and I hope to see you all again soon. Thanks, bye.